All right, Introduction to Computers and Information Systems. Organizing data. We've already covered in our podcast the concepts on how you would take notes. And now we're talking a little bit about files and how they're managed, and the difference between application and data files. A couple key points right here. Alright, so we've already covered binary numbers. We talked about bits, ones and zeros. A lot of times 4 bits usually gives us a byte of information. We refer to the speed that the bits move as how many bits per second moving between devices or between your computer and the network. And then bytes, we talk about storage, like on a hardware, like a hard drive, you know, how many bytes, like 1 terabyte of storage. And then inside the computer we talk about memory, and you might have 4 megabytes of memory. We talked about computer networks and the value of networks, whether you're working in a local area network or a wide area network, whether it's through wire or in the air or using light through fiber optics. We talked about the importance of sharing data and devices in a network, and also the possibility of sharing applications. And there, you know, you could have an app on a server, you can have an app that runs in your browser, pull an app off the internet to use temporarily. A lot of different facets. The same thing with the data. It could be stored on a hard drive in your computer, it could be stored out in the cloud, it could be on a hard drive, stored in the cloud on the server at your particular business or college or whatever. So we introduced the internet, cloud computing, uses of the internet, how we access it using our service provider, and so forth. And then the value. We'll talk more about that later on. So that leads us up to file management. Now this is part 2 of file management. We in the first part I actually showed files and directories and so forth. But in this we want to take a look at these terms and see if we can better understand them. Data files, like if this was my PC right here, and my PC has a hard drive, I can store data files on my hard drive. Program files, the software that manipulates the data file, that's very common to have that stored right on my computer. Or if you have, let's say you have a tablet, if you have a tablet, the apps are right in the tablet, and the data files are right in the tablet. Okay? And that information then we'll talk more about later on. That information comes from here into your memory, gets processed, and then you can save it back out. So program files, software that executes on the computer. A lot of program files will have extensions of EXE. The extension is that 3 or more letters at the end of a file name. For example, we've already worked with, or you should be working with, downloading putty.exe. That's going to execute on our computers. In fact, you don't even have to install it. Data files, a lot of times they'll have an extension such as DOC or DOC as an example, X, and those are both word processing files. Those are files that you have to use a piece of software like Microsoft Office package to work with those documents. So those are word processing, spreadsheet, and a number of things of these are mentioned in the assignment too. So these files work with productivity software. Well, we can also have files like a WAV file, MP4. We can have files that deal with music, video, and these file types then, in order to actually look at that or use it, you have to have some type of software that runs it. So the software files, the programs, they're stored on a computer, and data files, they're stored on the computer. Where do we store them? In a lot of cases, they're stored on a hard drive. Now, where is the hard drive? We're going to talk a little more about that. Could be in the cloud, could be in your local computer or a server in the same area as you. You might be carrying around a flash drive, which you can put into the device and store your files. Not all devices allow you to connect to them with a flash drive. For example, some tablets don't, like the iPad. You can burn the information on a DVD in your computer. Now, how does the files get organized? It's a little bit repetitive, but folders are directories. We talked about that in part 1, and then this hierarchical design. And I showed you that in the first part of the video. Alright, so let's move on. Management of files and folders. Assignment 1, you should be able to create and delete folders, copy and move files between folders, and you should know where your files are located. And important information, you need to make a backup of it. You have to figure out what is important enough to make a backup. Why do we do it? Well, if you're storing lots of files on your local hard drive connected right into your PC, and something happens to that drive goes bad, if you don't have another copy of those files somewhere else, you're going to lose them. Which files are backed up? You have to decide. Which ones are of value, which ones can you afford to lose. Some people back up entire systems, some people don't back up the program files because they can reload them from the original disk and so forth. When to back up depends on how often your files are changing. Okay, some people back up, some systems back up every night, some systems during the day, some people back up once a month. It depends on the business and or the individual. Now, this will be important. Where do you back up? Some people burn their information on a DVD. Some people put it on an external hard drive and connect it to their computer. Alright, let's look at some examples. I like to draw it this way. Here's your PC. Somewheres, most PCs, not all of them, have a hard drive in which you keep software files and data files. So that information can move back and forth. You process that information inside the computer in the processor, and then you can save it back out here, and then you can retrieve it and bring it back in. A couple ways you can retrieve it. If you click on a data file, that has an extension like .xls, the computer will look for a software file that is Microsoft Excel, because those two go together. If it can't find it, it will give you an error. Alright, now we can save files on our hard drive and then maybe use a flash drive to connect in, copy them off to there. So we have a couple copies, or if we need to move home with the files. Or some people will email them home. We'll look at that. The computer is hooked to a network, and let's just use NIACC as an example. And this is actually divided into two parts. We have the IT part and the main campus. More on that here in a minute. This is connected, you don't have to worry about how, to the internet. At least not now. The internet allows us to transport between locations. So I gave an example of a Dropbox on my other computer. Well, the Dropbox is connected to the internet also. Okay, so let's say this is Dropbox. They're connected to the internet. And so I showed we could take the files I'm working on here and I could put them in the Dropbox, and then I have a little network at home in which my wife and I have our computers connected to. We're connected to the internet, so I can be at home on my computer, my laptop or a desktop, and I can go out to Dropbox, get those files, and bring them back here. If I want to, I could save them on my hard drive. Now, some people use these as backup and or to move files between locations. A third option that we talk about here in class, which is really the same idea as Dropbox, is out in the cloud. Google has large amounts of servers with lots of space, and you could save it in your Google Drive. There sits your file. And the same thing, you can get that file when you're at home, or, I don't know, coffee shop that has internet access, or McDonald's that has internet access. So you have access to that. You could also have access to Dropbox on either of those. And not at a big expense. Now, some people back up on a portable hard drive. You plug it in. I do that at home. So we have a portable hard drive, big one. I can plug that into my network, take my computer, and send my files out there. Or from my wife, send her files out there. And then keep that. I unplug it actually. I don't leave it plugged in. Set it aside. Or I keep some files backed up here. But then you got to trust Google's always going to be there. I keep some files here, not a lot, but you have to trust Dropbox to always be there. I think I have enough lines on this diagram, so I'm going to call it quits. So we have some things specifically we're going to cover that has to do with the IT side of campus and the regular side of campus at NIACC. But this is it for data organization.